on our panel. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And do we have Ron?
Not yet.
Still don't have. Oh, okay. Well, once he gets here, we'll have him introduce himself, even if it's a bit of an interruption. So let us start in with a little bit of a definition. Planner, pretty obvious. Somebody who kind of figures out the story ahead of time. I've also heard the term architect used. I don't think it needs much definition. Some people dislike the term pantser because it sounds like you're not engaging this part of your body when you write. So sometimes this can be called a discovery writer or a gardener, and I'll have our panelists maybe talk a little bit about how they would define the discovery writer or gardener or pantser. And then a quilter is a term that maybe not everybody is very aware of, but to the best of my understanding, and I have done some quilting, not a lot, a quilter will get an idea for a story and write a scene, which may show up somewhere in the middle of the story or may not, maybe write several scenes, and after they've got these key scenes, start to put together the structure around. So maybe I'll just, I'm going to go in our panel in the reverse order that I just invited you to speak and ask you maybe just to give some illumination or insight into what you feel are the definitions of these three terms. So I'm going to start with Chadwick.
I think you covered it fairly well, but I don't have a problem with the term pantser. I kind of like the idea of the, writing by the seat of your pants. I liken that style of writing a lot to driving on a highway at night, where you can see just far enough ahead of you by your head. Like you can't see where you're going, but you can see just far ahead of you with your headlights to continue going, right? And so that is my style of writing by inclination. I have used all three depending on the project. And I kind of feel that every writer is sort of somewhere on a spectrum in there, between the hard edges of I don't plan anything and I plan everything. You're gonna lean, one way or the other. Yeah, I like the quilting. Quilting and pantsing feel very similar to me, where you pants. You write what comes to you as it comes to you, and then you figure out how it fits together. Whereas the planning and architecting, that can be as hard down to like full on blueprints, and I know what happens in every scene, and I have the moments plotted out in those scenes, or it can be just like these are the major beats of my story. For myself, it's something I tend to apply after the fact. I write my first draft and then I build an outline, especially for pacing, and apply it over top of my first draft and like look at how it flows at that point. But yeah, I feel everybody is, I don't know, I don't think any writer is 100% always one style, because eventually a project will come to loggerheads with the way you typically write.
Fluid.
Mm-hmm.
Den.
Okay. Let's see. Well, I mean, I assume that a plot. Well, I've done all three. So I think I've done 3 novels. As basically filter. My attitude towards, I'll just sit down and I'll write the scenes I want to write. Could be at the end, could be at the beginning, someplace in the middle. Sometimes it's a fun scene, sometimes it's a violent scene. And I just keep writing scenes until the whole thing comes together. But I think in the back of my head, deep down, I know the thing. I know the whole novel. I know the whole story. It's just a matter of what parts you get put down first. I've also been a hardcore plotter for a couple of novels where I sat down, wrote out the novel. I wrote, basically the scripts for each chapter, all the plot points, out in the line, and then I followed that map. I used that for pulp novel type stories. So something, in the veins of the old pulp, like Fine or Burroughs or stuff like that. And it's a lovely format. It's like basically 4 chapters ending in cliffhanger on to the next thing. Right foot the house on fire. For pantsers, I've tried that with a few novels. I do that a lot with short stories. In fact, I've wrote a couple of short stories lately which just opened up with a line, and I literally had no idea what the next entrance was. To find out what happens in the story, I have to keep on writing. That's really working with that format. Most of the time that we're writing, we know the story that we're going to do. Most of the time we sit down to write, we have at least your characters or structure, the plot, the conflict, all worked out in our heads internally. And then we simply, it's the approach to completion. We are all immersed in stories and storytelling. And so we understand conflict in it. We understand, the 3-act structure or the 5-act structure. We understand plotting arcs, character developments. And we're incorporating all of that in our subconscious before we put pen to paper.
Okay, thank you. Reed.
Hold on. I got to remember to unmute myself. I think probably because I'd say we probably all tried all 3 methods at some point, right? But I'm terrible at plotting. My plots always look they're incoherent. They're just absolutely incoherent. I plotted the last novel I started working on, and I believe one of the plot points that I was trying to get to was just simply entitled "The Cracker Barrel Massacre." I'm not good at it. I have a hard time putting down a template. One of them was entitled "Sawed-off pump action shotgun," and that's literally all it said. That was my plot point. So I do quite a lot of pantsing and I do quite a lot of quilting. I suffer from horrific nightmares, and I get a lot of these stories, from my nightmares, and nightmares are incredibly disjointed things. They don't flow coherently. So I have very often a lot of just scenes that I have to stitch together, which means I do a lot of quilting. And the first thing that I actually managed to get published was just 100% pants. I had no idea what I was doing. I had characters. I was very familiar and very comfortable with my characters. I had a setting. I was very familiar and comfortable with my setting. I had an antagonist. I made myself very familiar and comfortable with my antagonist. And then I just let her rip. And I was always surprised to see where it went because I had no idea. I was just I was discovering it as I was writing it. And that's me.
Okay, thank you. Barb.
Oh God, that sounds like a horror to me. When I first started writing, I was definitely a pantser because I didn't know that you could or should outline. And so I would go so far and then I had no clue where it was going. I would be completely stalled. Then when computers developed the ability to cut and paste, and I didn't have to retype everything. I mean, this is a long time ago. Then I could just write, and then I would come back and I go, oh, this really goes there, and that really goes there. So I was sort of quilting a little bit later on, and then when I started working on the novels with Josh, we had to come up with a way that we could do this because he was a bit of a plotter and I'm quilting and all these kinds of things. So we developed a system where we completely plotted, I mean, everything. We had these huge files where every scene was plotted out. Like we told the whole story like in a summary first, and then we broke it down like a skeleton, and then we pieced together all the organs and tissues. And then when we got to that point, we would literally have about 10 lines of detail of what the scene was supposed to do, who the point of view characters were, primary and secondary goals of the scene, and character notes and everything. And I have one of the paragraphs of one of the first things, if I can show you. Can I do that?
I don't know. I think you have to be made co-host. And because I'm not a host, I can't make you a co-host. At least I don't think I'm a host. I don't.
Let me see if I can share this. Oh, no, host is disabled participant screen sharing. Okay. Well, never mind then.
Yeah.
Try again, because that wasn't supposed to be a thing, and I just tried changing it again.
Okay, let's see. Oh, look at that.
Can you share?
I think I can.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, great.
There you go. So here's the you see at the top, this is outline 18. So we modified as we went along. And part 1, it has the actual dates that this was supposed to be set. And in the bold, and Sertorius was a real person. So anything in bold was something that we couldn't mess with. And then we wrote done when the scene was written. And the primary goals, the secondary goals. And we did that for 67 scenes.
Wow. How long is the book?
Well, it's shorter than this. It was 165,000.
Yeah.
And it came out after Dave Gross was the editor, and he cut out 35,000 words. And he did it in the most brilliant way ever. So we'll talk about this when we talk about dealing with an editor.
Yeah, but so you're on average, your scenes were give or take around 2,000 words per scene.
Yeah, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little bit less. So I'm going to stop that now.
Yeah.
So very detailed stuff. And if we decided that we had to insert a scene, that there needed to be a transition or a bridge or anything, then it would be scene 42A or 42B, you know. And without that, we could not have written. We actually wrote 3 novels, planned 3 more, which we decided not to write because I was so done. Yeah, so now with the last short story I wrote, I went back to look to see when I first started kind of thinking about it, and it's been like 5 years. And I found a conversation that I had on Skype that I saved with Mike Resnick, where he's like asking me all these questions, you know, like leading questions, like how are you going to do this, and how are you going to do that, and how are you going to do this. So he pretty much made me plot it out right on the spot. And so now I can't seem to write anything without knowing exactly where it's going, who's the main point of view character, and what are all the pieces. That's the finished product.
So you've been kind of converted.
I think I'm converted, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm sorry to say, but I have to tell you, you know, Anne Marston. I think Chadwick and a lot of other people know Anne. She started writing Kingmaker's Sword, which was her first novel. She was totally a quilter. And I watched her write this, and she'd write the 10th scene, and then she'd write the 4th, and then she'd write this, and she'd write that. And you say, well, how is it going to end? And she says, I don't know. I haven't written that part yet. And it's like, if I don't know where the end is, I'm doomed. I'm back being 18 years old going, oh, where's the story going?
Yeah.
So that's my
It's-
story.
It's so funny you say if you don't know where the end is going, you can't go on, because if I don't have a critical mass of words before I figure out the end, I don't want to keep going, because once I figure out the end of the story, it's I think it's a discovery draft thing. Once I know the story, I'm satisfied, and so I need to have enough words in the background to give it momentum for me
Oh my gosh.
to go through the time to like, and maybe it's because I feel weird saying this in front of my very first fiction editor, who was Barb. But I hate revising so much.
I was just about to ask you. I bet you hate revising.
I do. So if I don't have a critical mass of words to kind of push me through finishing that story and knowing that it's worth my time to revise, it usually just sits there.
Oh, to me,
And,
the journey
and this
is
is
the thing.
and that's maybe where my quilting comes in. Like whenever an anthology open call shows up, I go through my file of all my unfinished stuff and I pull everything that might fit. And then I start stitching it together and gradually like chopping away the parts of it that don't.
Oh
So like
God.
most of my 5,000 word short stories start as 10,000 words of relative nonsense
Oh
and get
God.
winnowed down. Yeah, it's not
Can I
efficient.
Ask a quick question of you, Chadwick, and I'll give this question actually to everybody. I'm going to weigh in on question 1, but let's follow the flow right now. And that is, how long then does it take you to write? Let's stick with novels for now. How long does it take you to write a novel if you're like cutting from like double to, to a form that you need to reach?
That's more a function of my short story writing.
Okay.
My novels have not been as much of an issue. My first two, the first one, which was unpublished and will probably always remain so. I love it, but it's a fatally flawed baby. That one and Thunder Road were entirely pants. No idea. I just sat down with like a vague concept and a shell of a protagonist and just started running with it. I'll go with the published. I'll go with the published works just because it's easier for people to maybe relate to. Thunder Road took me 9 months to draft, and then because I had no deadline, I puttered with it for about another year. Tombstone Blues, the sequel, took me a month and a half to draft, and I wrote it immediately after finishing the first draft of Thunder Road. Like the story showed up wholesale in my mind and I was chasing it. Like I was trying to type as fast as I could so I didn't lose it. And the finale of the trilogy took anywhere from depending on how you measure it, from 5 years to a year and a half. Because I wrote some scenes, I'm like, oh, this is definitely for the ending. And I would just write it because I knew it. That novel ended up being quilted.
Yeah.
But I wrote that one in like 100 to 500 word chunks in my notebook on the bus.
Oh my God.
In no particular order.
Oh, God.
Yeah, no. So those ones, most of those were a really fast first draft that I then built up. Like some of my chapters or scenes would be like X happens, like what Reed was saying. Like it could be as simple as like, and I use this. My friend Karen Dudley gave me the idea because I often will insert chapters. So to save me from renaming them, I would just have like after like say chapter 3, it's just chapter X, and then I can shuffle them around if I need to. But I would then like it would be a scene where it'd be like big fight here, and I didn't know the particulars of the fight, and I would just kind of move on until I knew what I needed to write there. So my novels tend to be loose first drafts that I build up, and my short stories tend to be a bunch of collections that I hone down into a finished piece.
Because
So
I'm
it's
going to
almost
throw this out then to everybody, because I'll give you a couple examples. What's his name? Jay Lake. Jay Lake is brilliant. Well, he passed away, but absolutely brilliant. And one of the discoveries that he had was that the stories that he wrote kind of piecemeal, he didn't feel, or novels, were as good as the ones that he could hold the entire thing in his head and just push it out in one big, like you just described, Chadwick. And especially, I know quite a few self-published people who are writing, 8 books a year. And I've heard it said, if you can't get the whole book down within 3 months, you're not going to have a coherent story.
Yeah.
So that's on one side. On the other side, whose name did I jot down? Oh, Daniel Abraham. He is very prolific. He gets out about 3 books a year, and he would say, he's a planner for sure. And he would say, it takes so long to write something that is pantsed, and I'm not a pantser, so I can't really speak from my own experience here. He says it takes so long to get it down, and then you've got this mass, and the entire thing needs, as like the idea of page 1 rewrite, that it takes so long to write by the seat of your pants. He says, as a professional writer, I simply can't. If I'm going to put out 3 books a year under 3 different names, I have to plan them because it's efficient.
Yes.
I know what I'm doing. I get it done, on to the next one. So let's have maybe Reed at this point, or Den throw in on length and how much time it takes you and your revision process.
Honestly, I'm so chaotic. It's hard to keep track. If we're looking at just a 40,000 word block, because all of my novels and novellas are all of different shapes and sizes. So if we're just looking at a 40,000 word block, my last major novella was about 80,000 words. It took me like 2 years to write it, and that was completely pantsed. That was just 100%. I had the characters, I had the setting, and I ran with it. But then I'll do a 40,000 word novella in a month. It's just literally it's just like it takes over, and you're right, like the one that took me 2 years to write, there was this like time that was just absorbed by picking up where I left off, because I could barely remember where I left off. It was like months apart. So I would write all this stuff, and like I get to a point, and then I'd have to take a break, or I'd have to do something. I believe some of that time was eaten up by college. I'd take a semester off of writing to finish up my classwork, and I come back, and I literally have to read everything from beginning to end before I could even write a sentence after where I'd left off. So it's honestly, I think if there isn't at least a little bit of plotting, yeah, pantsing can really eat up a ton of time. That for sure feels real to me. Yeah, go ahead.
Den there?
I think he's gone.
Oh, did we lose Dan?
No, he's not. He's not active on in the main hall.
Oh,
So, I
okay.
mean, he's there, but he could be.
Barb, if you're a co-host, can you make me a co-host? Because considering that you shared your screen, I thought I'd maybe blow everybody's mind and share my screen.
You probably can now.
Yeah,
I
let's
fixed
do
the
this.
sharing issue.
Oh, okay. All right.
Zoom. I got you the link, so if you want to switch over to the Zoom, then they'll be able to see you better.
Yeah.
Can you guys see this?
Yes, we can.
So you talked about yourself, Barb, as an Uber planner. I'd like you to have a look at this. This novel I'm working on right now, I'm planning to come out at 110,000 words or so. My publisher has offered me the choice to make it a little bit longer. I have, here we are, 110 scenes. How about that? So you can see the way I've got it organized here. The first column, the green is Act 1. And I've got it sort of divided into days. So light green, dark green, light green, dark green. So I've got a schedule of the time, right? The red would be like a major turning point for the antagonist. And then we get into yellow for the middle, and then orange for the end. The second row, the color coding shows whose point of view, so I can keep track of whose point of view it is. Green for my main character, red for the sister, gray for the other sister. This column is the narrative, so this is what happens in the scene. And then I also add the because or why now. So in other words, if there's going to be a chain of logic, why is she so happy right now? Because life is good and sex is satisfying. So that's why she's happy right now. And then the information that needs to be included. And the yellow simply highlights the scenes that I've already written. And when we get to no more yellow, then that's as far as I've written. And I'm about probably 80% of the way through the book. There you go. I'm on scene 83.
Wow.
That is stunning. That is absolutely stunning. I would
tell
never
that
be
to
able to do
people and
anything
they
so
almost
elaborate.
throw up because they think, I can't do that. But you know what I love about it is when I sit down to write a scene, I just do a copy paste of these three sections, the narrative, the because, the information, and I know exactly what's happening in the scene, but I don't find it boring. Because the actual way the characters do it and the way I get the information to come forward, I find it very creative.
I have to. I'm impressed. I'm extremely impressed by that. That is amazing.
There is one nice thing about being able to do that too, where you have this little tidbit of what needs to happen in this scene and how it happens. That whole how in that scene is totally pantsed.
Exactly.
You know, it's just, that's it. You have this framework and then you just write it.
I remember Jay Lake once saying, so in chapter 5, they go to Peru. I don't say how they get to Peru or what happens on the way to Peru, but they get to Peru.
Yeah. And it's going to be 4,000 words.
We were not hearing too much from you. We were talking a little bit about the fact that pantsing maybe can be a little bit less efficient and may take a longer time. But on the other hand, if you're pantsing, maybe you've got the whole thing in your head and it just comes out like really fast. So what's your speed and how long does it take you to write a book? Or
are you talking to me?
Yes.
Hello?
Den Valdrin?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I had to go and come back in Zoom. Doesn't
Glad
seem
to
like
have
the
you
connection
here.
is very good, but for me, when I sit down to write, like this story is in my head, so it's just a matter of getting it out, and I can come back like a year and a half later and pick up where I left off. It's always fairly concrete. My writing speed's about 1,000 words an hour. And I think my best writing days were about 10,000 to 15,000 words in a day, but you have life hitting you all the time. So I think that the fastest I've done a novel is probably 2-3 months. And other times, 6 months to a year. There was one project I started that was like a 150,000 word novel, and I stopped in the middle when my father died and wrote about 250,000 words of other stuff and then came back to it. So, I mean, it's not like I've got deadlines that I have to work towards. So I just, you just do it as it suits you.
But then both you and Reed have talked a little bit about life, like things that get in the way. I mean, if you've got college, for instance, or if you've got a job or your father passes away, and Chadwick, I believe you've got a day job as well. Yeah, I would wonder if you found, and certainly I did when I was working a day job as well, that with all these various interruptions, that slows down the process too. So for me, as you can see, like when I do a plot, you can see it's uber plotted. What I try to do is go away on a writer's retreat. Actually, I've got a new novel coming up that I'm going to be starting in June. And I'm actually thinking of going off to a hotel room for 4 or 5 days, because I take that concentrated time and I get it down and I say, oh my goodness, in scene 68, it doesn't make any sense what he's doing. I got to put something back into scene 3, right? So I take that concentrated time to create the plan. But if I've got an editing client for a week that I really have to focus in on, and I get away from my novel, when I come back, it's really clear to me exactly what I'm doing. So I don't have as much of that having to go back and read the whole thing from the beginning. But how, if you're writing by the seat of your pants, yeah, that makes me wonder, would you not then have to do a lot of going over in the process of making your first draft?
Felt like it. Felt like it a lot.
Well, I've had, I think that almost all of us as writers have day jobs. Not very few of us are immune from life. So, writing, unless you've got a deadline, is something that you do when you can, as you can. I don't know. Like, as far as pantsing goes, I think that there's writing with a definite plot and a story in your head. The thing that that you're doing. And then there's writing with no real plan, and that's kind of scary and working without a net. I don't think many of us really do that. We're so immersed in structure that even if we say, well, we don't know what's going to happen, well, we know it's going to be a 3-act story structure. We know that we have to build rising tension. We are committing to certain characters, and we're going to be doing certain things. So you can be surprised along the way, but if you're pantsing, I think the big risk is just, going off the side of the cliff. Suddenly you take a character or a situation and it stretches out or it goes off in its own direction. You've got a new plot or a new subplot coming up. The main characters get derailed. Think of it as Psycho. We're following the heroine. She's committed the crime. She's escaping. She's having second thoughts. And then the next thing you know, she's killed in a shower and everything's gone off in a different direction. That can happen with pantsing. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it depends, on how willing you are to embrace that kind of thing.
And well, actually, you bring this up, and I think Chadwick, you mentioned it earlier. I think a couple of people have mentioned it, and that is that when you're writing by the seat of your pants, you've got structure in your head. I mean, let's face it, from the time we've had our first cartoons on Saturday morning and our fairy tales before school, we are learning story structure. And I'll tell you, as an editor, for instance, I have seen this several times where I can talk about ADHD because it runs in my family. I got 4 kids, 3 of them were diagnosed. My husband always says to me, yeah, me too, yeah. And I think that ADHD is a wonderful quality for any artist to have, because you can do that lateral thinking, right? That's where your creativity comes from. So don't mean to say anything negative about people with ADHD. I'm talking about myself. But I don't know how many young writers I have started with who have this sort of mass of a bunch of scenes that kind of don't fit together. And my big work with them as a developmental editor is to help them find that structure or that spine, because novels are all about structure, right? So would you say that maybe you do have some sort of a plan inside your head, but is maybe an unconscious or
Unformed.
formed?
Yeah, unformed.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I think,
I could agree with that
Yeah.
in a way.
yeah.
Do you want to take this one, Chadwick?
Well, I mean, I think you sort of, you're a product of what you have read and consumed as well, right? So I don't think it's any surprise that I write two-fisted adventure tales because I grew up reading comics. Those were the first things that I read. That's what I like to read. You know, when I was first trying to write epic fantasy, what I was reading at the time was urban fantasy. And it just sort of, one of the reasons I think my first book didn't work was what I was consuming was not what I was writing, and not what I really enjoyed. Like, I liked the mashup of magic and our world. And so once I made that switch, things started clicking and I held things a lot better in my head. For going back a bit to, you know, when Susan mentioned that if she figured out a scene didn't work, she would go and rewrite that part of the outline. Like, I do a similar thing, I guess, even as a pantser. And that's, if I know I need to do something, I just go back to what I've previously written and I just make a note in what I've already, like, it's, I guess, kind of reverse outlining, but it has the same purpose. It's so I don't forget this later. It's like, I need to foreshadow X around here. Yeah, I wish I was more efficient, but I don't know if anyone else on here has done any tie-in writing, but that was kind of the fastest I had ever written and edited and submitted a book, was when I was writing something for somebody else's world, and I had a hard word count limit. I could not go over 85,000 words. My shortest book is 95,000 words, so I knew it's not so much that I plotted it, but I knew I had to have that in mind. And so that I think that was the closest I came to outlining anything before I wrote it, was knowing that I cannot go over 85,000 words. And if I typically write around 20 chapters in a book, that this is, you know, this is how long they need to be. Even writing novellas, to keep them from becoming novels, I'm like, okay, if I've got 40,000, 50,000-ish words, that means 10 chapters for me instead of 20. And that felt more reasonable for me to outline in a way, as somebody who typically doesn't do it. I don't know. So the novellas I've tried to write have been more outlined than any of my novels, just to keep them from becoming novels, because I didn't want them to be that.
One of my first novels turned out, when I finally took out all the dreck out of it, and the scenes that were only there to deliver one really clever line, when you take those out, it was down to about 42,000 words, and I thought, well, this is not a novel. So
Barely.
Barely.
So what about other types of pre-work that you do, like, other than plotting a novel? I know for myself, I do a ton of pre-work. I don't necessarily write out a formal character description, but I do a lot of thinking about my characters, and particularly for me, it's a question of, how does each of my characters respond to, you know, whatever thematic element that I'm dealing with. So for instance, my Addicted to Heaven series, one of the thematic elements obviously is addictions, and this character might have a certain attitude, this character might have a certain attitude, or their attitudes may change over the course of the book. So I'll do a lot of thinking about, how do I want to explore that theme through the characters' attitudes and the things that they do. So that's something that I do as pre-work, other than plotting out you know, the events of the story. Do you spend very much time with pre-work, or is it pretty minimal and you jump in?
Well, for me, most of my pre-work is actually research in the world or the setting in some fashion. And I have this character in mind, and then as I'm researching this, part of the story is kind of her story, or his story is revolving around this setting, like how are they going to do this, and where are they going to go, and how that's all going to happen. And because if I don't have a clear map of the environment, I can't write the book because I don't know which direction my characters are going. So I'm a big map maker. Like I actually make maps, and the worst part was when we had the map after we wrote the first novel, so we had to fuss with the map and try to make it fit. And there were some places where the town was east, but on the map north. Just can't fix it. So yeah, but I like to have a map.
I
I
think
make
research is
soundtracks.
vastly important. Yeah.
How about the rest?
I make a soundtrack for my pre-work for novels. It's, I guess you could call it an emotional outline. It shows me roughly how I want the book to feel at certain points. And because I listen to a lot of music, the songs become very shorthand touchstones. And if I get stuck, I go for a drive, I go for a walk, I listen to the soundtrack. And that sort of I think is what keeps me from drifting as a pantser. As I sort of know emotionally what I want the story to be.
That's kind of a brilliant concept.
That's great. I love it.
If I'm doing like sword and sorcery or second world stuff, the world building becomes more of my pre-work. I think about it, like I still leave myself lots of openings, but I'll think about what do I want magic to be like, who has magic, I'll make some of those decisions before I start writing, just so that I can use them to affect my protagonist in an effective way. Otherwise, not a lot. In terms of character, I think of who I want my protagonist to be. I think of who would push their buttons in a good way or a bad way. Sort of a who or what would they love or what would they hate, and then I kind of know. Like if you've got a salt of the earth, blue collar sort of fellow, a shape-shifting trickster with a big mouth is probably not going to be the person he wants to be trapped in a car with. And then that became a lot of fun for me to write when he was trapped in a car with that guy. So
that's awesome.
I feel like I desperately need to know absolutely everything about my characters in the setting before as my pre-work. Because like I said, a lot of this happens to me from just nightmares that I have, and I have all of these scenes that don't necessarily coherently fit together. And when a good example is there was one scene that was simply entitled "Delivering the Bomb," and I had to do a lot of research to make sure that would even work, because it might make sense in my dreamscape where literally reality is what you make it, but in the real world, would something like that happen? In the circumstances, I had to do a lot of research into things like nuclear power and the effects of hello kitty and the effects of nuclear meltdown, and having to deliver radioactivity to a large diverse population. So like the research and like literally knowing my characters and knowing my setting is so vastly important to me to get anything done. I think this came up earlier, like the last time I at one point I was trying to pants something, and I wasn't perfectly comfortable with both the setting and the characters, and I eventually just abandoned it after like something like 15,000 16,000 words. That's my pregame.
Yeah. Dan?
I think that for me, probably the real work comes from the pregame. You're just thinking things over. You are running through scenes in your head. You are developing or evolving the characters and the relationships. And there's a fair bit of tangible research sometimes. It's always different. Sometimes Bear Cavalry is a major wild research expedition. The Mermaid's Tale just kind of percolated. And sometimes you can cut your pre-work down by just kind of like sitting down, logically mapping it out, and following that. like Chadwick, I think I also kind of sometimes write the music. If I can find a song that or like a musical vibe that just kind of relates to the character, I'll play that, and it sort of like brings me to the place the character needs to be.
I can't write to music at all. And I can, if I'm trying to get into a mood, I might find one piece of music to listen to. I listen to a lot of Enya and Clannad, but not the English. Because if I heard the English, it would be telling a story that would move me away from the story I wanted to tell. So it was just the musical. No lyrics at all. But generally, if it's noisy, maybe I'm a little ADD too, as a squirrel. Can't do it. And that's probably why I spend more time editing these days than I do writing.
Yeah, and I would say what you said there, Chadwick, about the music, that is huge for me. I'm writing a World War II novel coming up, and I've been listening to like Vera Lynn, and oh my goodness, it takes you right there, or swing music or stuff like that, really takes you there. But like Barb, no, I can't write with the music playing, but I'll have it in my environment. So it'll be in my car, and I'll have it all around me.
Yeah.
One of the other advantages that I really find with being a plotter is when I go away for summer vacation, like some of you may know, when I married my husband, he had 5 motorcycles. We're not quite sure how many he's got right now, but we do go away for these trips on the motorcycle. And when we're going zoom, 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 of course, I want to be in the moment, but lots of times, it's straight highway stuff. We don't have the helmets with the headsets. So it's very, I was going to say quiet. It's intellectually very quiet, which is probably good for me because my brain's going all the time. But there are times also when I don't want to waste that time. I've got 6 hours on this motorcycle today, and it gets a little boring if all you're doing is just looking at flat highway. So if I can take a little piece of paper, and what I do is I fold it up about this, and it fits in my pocket, right? And on this side, I've got a whole scene. I've got the 5 points of this scene, and I've got the 5 points of this scene, and I got the 5 points of, right? And I can put quite a few scenes on one piece of paper with my plan. And then I've got a recorder that I actually will record my words in spite of the road noise, as long as I make sure I have lots of padding under the recorder, under the microphone. And when we get to our hotel or wherever it is we're going, my husband's tired because he's been riding the motorcycle all day. I'm just sitting on the back. It's pretty easy for me. So he will go and have a nap. And then I've got an hour of a little iPad this big, and I transcribe what I've heard onto the iPad, because I can't dictate if anybody can hear me. It just shuts down the creative process entirely, right? But I figure nobody can hear me inside the helmet, and it's terrible. It's really bad first draft stuff, but it's first draft. And I'm like, Chadwick, I love revision. Once I've got something, I can say, oh, I can change this and it's better. Yeah, I can change this and it's better. And so I really love revision. So yeah, it allows me to make use of time for writing that I wouldn't otherwise have, because family is important. You got to be there, right? So
I think Kevin J. Anderson said he dictates a lot of his first drafts. I think he said that when he was a guest at When Worlds Collide. I've done a little bit of that on long drives. I just use a recorder app on my phone, and I do that more for plotting purposes. If I think of a scene and I don't want to lose it, I don't come from an oral storytelling background. I feel like that would be helpful for the dictation and like getting it closer to what a final draft would be. I feel very self-conscious about saying these unformed ideas.
You had a lot of flat, straight roads where you come from too, don't you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. When I would go from Winnipeg to Brandon, it's basically like point west and straight for 2
And
hours.
flat.
So
Totally flat.
there's a few hills when you get closer to Brandon, but yeah, the first stretch out of Winnipeg is
Self-driving car.
sometimes I think I can see my Calgary friends from there.
So Susan, when you are dictating, do you dictate dialogue? I mean, I could dictate ideas and plots and points and things I want to do, but it would be more telling myself what I want to do.
Well,
If I start to do dialogue, then when I come to write it, it's already done. And then I lose that spark.
when I first started doing it, I would do it in the car. Like this is when I was still working and I'd have a commute. And so I could do it in the car because I was only just putting down the ideas. And the thing that I found helpful was because I was working 5 days a week, I'd come on Saturday and I'd play the tape. And I not only got the ideas, I got the sound of my voice. So I
Yeah.
got the emotion of it as well.
Mhm.
But I thought, no, there's no way I can do dialogue and actual narration. And then I tried it. And as long as nobody's listening to me and I give myself permission to do
Yeah.
what they call that shitty first draft,
Yeah.
you give yourself permission, it helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Used to do that ages ago. I'd go for walks and I looked like I was a crazy person talking to myself.
So
I've done the same thing. I've had conversations in my head between characters.
and do you dictate them or
No, like a lunatic, I'll walk up and down the street literally having a conversation between two fictionary people.
You're talking out loud so where other people could hear you?
Sometimes I've done it. Yeah, I've been caught doing it.
what they say about writers? They're the people who are afraid that they'll stop hearing voices in their head.
You know, Chadwick, we can hear you typing.
Oh, he's got another story. He's got to get it out.
I'm just in the chat.
I've got 5:35, and I did say I would open it up at 6:35. Sorry, guys. And I said I would open it up to the people in the room. So if everybody would like to go ahead and unmic, why don't we move into a more free-flowing conversation amongst everybody? Are there any questions or things that you'd like to respond to?
Read, yes.
I'm just reading the chat. You've got to keep up, right? I mean, I've got more questions I could keep feeding the panelists if you like, but maybe people who would like to see the conversation go on to the next.
Well, I'm a quilter myself. I have a certain certain scenes that I have already mapped out in my head, and but I mostly just write the story from beginning to end. Then the reason I usually go back to edit is for purposes of word count, like taking out all the wordiness if I feel that I'm getting a little bit too close to going over. And but
Question for one of the panelists.
oh, sorry. I don't have any questions.
Oh, okay, all right.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know what I think is very interesting, actually, is just looking around our panel. We've got five of us here today, and yeah, we're kind of heavy on more on the writing by the seat of your pants end of things.
Well,
Mhm.
I don't know.
Well,
Throw the dice. Take your chance.
I think Barb's experience of co-writing a novel could heavily influence that. Like me and my friend Sandra Wickham are working on a book together, which is just a we became really good friends at a con in the Patricia Briggs workshop at When Words Collide, and I loved her submissions so much that I thought, oh, this is somebody I'd like to work with someday, and I think we would have a similar sensibility and complementary sensibilities, and she is absolutely an uber plotter as well. And so that was a very interesting challenge for us of how are we going to accomplish this with these diametric, systems. And it ended up working out quite well for our first draft. Like we did plot out scenes in general, like sort of where we thought things were going. We did world building together. But we each had our own character, and we were alternating characters. And so a lot of it there was still a lot of surprises in there in the context of we have this outline, but she doesn't know how I'm going to get it there. And I write my chapter and then send it to her, and then she responds. And so there was a lot of good natured kind of ribbing and, things that became themes of the book, like her character punching my character became a theme of the book because my character kept beaking off at her characters. Or it was just a lot of fun, but I had to stretch to be comfortable with having that amount of structure, even though I absolutely ignored the outline in my first chapter, which we'll have to then revise because I still wasn't used to that yet.
It can kick ass.
Like it.
Oh, we have.
I have a case speaker.
Yeah, we have photographic evidence of Sandra kicking my ass actually at her writing about fighting panel. I was her fight dummy.
I remember that.
No, it was a lot of fun. I think it stretched me to be more comfortable. Like maybe that's why I now plot out my novellas, where I wouldn't have done that before, and I just would have accepted they were eventually going to be novels. And I think it made her a little bit more comfortable with surprises and pantsing. I mean, she's still going to be a plotter by inclination, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds good.
And I think that you need a certain level of plotting if you're going to be collaborating.
Oh yeah.
Kind of one hand needs to know what the other is doing, right?
Ann Marston, she's a quilter, and I'm sort of a planner plotter. We tried to collaborate on a story, even a short story. And we went to Banff and we got this really nice hotel room with a blue balcony and it was just great. And we spent some time trying to write, and we would write together like at the same time, like over each other's shoulders. She's a faster typer than I am. It was a nightmare. An absolute nightmare, because every word that I would type, she wouldn't like, and every word she would write, it's like, how many of those words do you need to say that one simple thing? It's like our styles were just so conflicting. So
that would be tough on friendship. Ooh.
Oh well, we had our set too, but she's still talking to me, and that was a long time ago. But the one thing that she will agree is we will never, ever collaborate on a piece of fiction again. So
yeah, certain boundaries can be helpful.
Yep. So.
Okay, well, you know what? If there's not a lot of questions coming from the audience, I've got another one for the panelists, and that is the kind of tools that you use. And I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I am a planner. You saw what I do, like from 1 to 110, they were all listed there. Having said that, I would also agree with what earlier people said, that even though I'm really probably way off on one end as uber planner, I do pants for sure. I mean, like the individual scenes are definitely pantsed. But the other thing is I love Scrivener. And even though, my first draft, I've got it all figured out, where I'm going to go with it. I do it in Scrivener, and every scene I have separated out. I don't put two scenes in the same Scrivener piece.
Yeah.
so that gives me that flexibility, because I know darn well I am going to be moving them around afterwards. So even though I'm hyper rigid in some ways with my planning, I love a flexible tool like Scrivener that allows me then afterwards to go back and reorganize and throw in a scene in the middle. So what about the rest of you guys? I mean, do you just have an open blank document, like a blank screen or a blank piece of paper, and just go for it? Or do you have certain tools that help you with getting it down on the page?
Honestly, just my laptop and Google Docs. Like, that's all I got.
So yeah, I'm going to have to change, because I did hear that Microsoft Word was their next update of Word is changing the track changes to look like Google Docs. And I have worked with track changes for 20 years, and I'm going to have a really hard time dealing with keeping different versions. I'm going to have to literally copy and paste it on my computer, every single document. And I'm not looking forward to that. So I'm holding off on automatic. I've disabled automatic updates for a while till that gets sorted out. So. And it's not for writers, people who work individually. And it's just me and my track changes, and Chadwick knows how much I rely on track changes. He has a couple of documents for me that were redlined all over. And so I don't know what I'm going to do, but I absolutely need that editing thing to help me.
And with the Zoom, is
and otherwise I just keep everything in separate files.
Anyone else? Any particular tools?
I primarily just use a Word document. I keep a random snippets open document of things that I don't know where they're going to go yet in the book. I have a cutscenes document, so there's probably like a novella's worth of cut Thunder Road business that I might turn into something someday, where I've just like grabbed a paragraph or grabbed a scene and pulled it out. I do a lot of drafting longhand in notebooks. For a long while I was taking the bus to work, and that was just kind of dead time that I was largely wasting on Twitter, which is like a lot of my time. But I found that was helpful, and then when I would transcribe those, that was almost like a free edit. Like I would clean up some of my phrasing, that kind of stuff. I've always wanted to try Scrivener, but I think the learning curve on it has put me off from diving in. Or when I thought about trying it, I'd already written a draft of Graveyard Mind, and I was already well into the Thunder Road trilogy. So it felt like Scrivener was something I would want to try out with a brand new project, where I could throw everything into that project into that. And so I've just never used it. It's one of these days I'll give it a try, I'm sure.
Maybe LibreOffice also. That's another one that has a track changes. It doesn't talk very well to Word, but at least it has an internal track change.
Delivery to her. It says,
Does anybody use like a text-to-speech one? Like I've had friends who use like Dragon Speak and similar programs, but I can't do it. Has anybody ever tried those?
Bridgeport.
Delivering from Northgate.
Okay, Northgate is the one that she usually has.
Derek, can you mute, please? Thanks.
Okay.
Not sure if Jared heard me.
I don't think so. I think you might be able to mute him.
Oh, hey, if I'm
You're a
a
host, you can mute. Oh, he's muted now. It's okay.
okay. Yeah, I did try Dragon Naturally Speaking, a number of years ago, because I had a bunch of tendonitis. And yeah, I found I could dictate, and then I immediately had to go into it and fix up all the mistakes, or it was gobbledygook. And if I didn't do it immediately, I couldn't remember what I wrote.
Yeah, so there's no point.
I think it's improved, but
Yeah, I imagine you could sort of train yourself to use it and train it to recognize what you needed. But I think I was also when I was around the time I was writing the third book in the Thunder Road trilogy, I also had injured my arm, and so I couldn't type. I wasn't supposed to type for a few months.
Wow.
And I was dealing not only with, kind of fantasy concepts, but a bunch of Icelandic words that I could barely spell, let alone pronounce. And so it was, I just figured that it would be more work than not. And so I just kind of, I think that was what bore out the writing in 100 to 500 word spurts in a notebook. That was about all, and I know roughly what my transcription rate is. So I use the same kind of notebooks, and I write roughly 100 words per page in that notebook.
Yeah.
So when I had 100,000 words of stuff, I'm like, I've got a first draft, and by that point, my arm was well enough to type. So then I had to begin the long process of transcribing it and putting things in some semblance of order.
My daughter has a new notebook that she can write longhand in, and then I don't know how she does this, but it'll go on to the computer.
And type,
I
yeah.
have one of those. Yeah, I can't use it to save my life, but I have one.
How about you? Do you have any particular technology that you find particularly helpful?
I don't.
Jen?
No, give me a keyboard, give me a screen and a printer, and I'm good. I'm low maintenance.
I should try it. I'm the worst typist ever. On a good day, I'm like 35 words a minute with like 12 mistakes. Terrible. I'm one of the very few girls in my age group that refused to take typing in high school.
Oh yeah, I can tell you my story. I was a pretty good high school student. I took typing. I think I got 51%. It was my lowest mark ever in anything, and it's the thing I use every day.
The most, yeah. So yeah, so just me and my typewriter.
Well, I'll tell you, I think we're kind of exhausted this topic. We're at 10 to the hour. So I'll just maybe ask each of you to have a quick final word, and then, or maybe a reminder to everybody what books you've got out right now, and then we'll close it up.
Not me first.
Not you first. Okay, Chadwick, I can see you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I've got 4 novels out: Thunder Road, Tombstone Blues, Too Far Gone, the Thunder Road trilogy, and Graveyard Mind, which are all urban fantasies, and about 20 short stories you can find all over the place, including All Cats Go to Valhalla, which is in the Swashbuckling Cats 9 Lives on the Seven Seas anthology, both of which are nominated for Aurora Awards this year. I've got a short story coming out in late summer in the Water anthology from Rhonda Parrish, which features my Midnight Man masked hero. He's kind of like a old school vigilante style superhero, like the Shadow or Green Hornet type of guy. And if you want to get a taste of my writing, I've got excerpts from all my novels and a bunch of my short stories up on my website. It's just chadwickginther.com. Yeah, I hope you'll check them out.
Super. Okay, Dan.
Well, I think the only advice I give to writers is to write. Think about what you're doing before you jump in, but you know what? Sit down and start bashing out. Even that's the most essential thing. And
Amen,
there's
brother.
no special rule. There's no special rule. Some people say write every day. Philip K. Dick, he didn't write every day. he just got way high on methamphetamine and would blurt out a novel in a weekend, and look where he ended up.
I gotta try that. I gotta try drugs.
Yeah. Okay, in terms of my books, The Mermaid's Tale, audiobook, ebook, Bear Cavalry, short story collections, Giant Monsters Sing Sad Songs, What Hungers Always Devours, or What Devours Always Hungers, No Doors in Dark Places, Dawn of Cthulhu, and let's see, Wall of Atlantis. I've got a couple of Doctor Who books, The Greatest Unauthorized Doctor Stories, and I've got a few Lex books, The Unauthorized Lex. And probably I will be having more and more. This month I'm trying to get out The Axis of Andes, about an alternate world war in South America.
Thank you.
You're so prolific. I'm in awe.
Yeah, I know. Read.
Well, all that gets me, and a couple of dollars gets me a cup of coffee.
Again, I'm Reed Alexander. I'm from madnessheart.press. That's madnessheart.press. I write mostly cosmic horror creature features. My two books out currently are In the Beginning and In the Shadow of the Mountain, which again, cosmic horror creature features. There are two more cosmic horror creature features coming out at the end of 2021. One of which is Parabiosis, the other of which I forgot the bloody title to, but just remember Parabiosis and you'll be able to find the other one. And then finally, in a couple of months, the Unnatural Perpetrators Department, the UPD series, is also going to be being released by Madness Heart Press. That's more of a young adult thing, but it's urban fantasy and it's really greedy violence, so give it a shot.
Reed, I love creature features. Which one would you recommend I start with?
Oh, start with my first one, In the Shadow of the Mountain.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll check it out.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Barb.
Okay, Barb Goller-Smith. I don't have any copies of On Spec handy, but I can be there most days. I have 3 novels. Druids and Captives are of the trilogy. This is like one big novel, and then the sequel. And Galaxy's Edge magazine, November. Have a story in here, right in front of Joe Haldeman. I'm totally thrilled. And this is my, this is the 4th novel that I wrote with Josh. This is a contemporary romance. There are parts of it I utterly adore. I love it. And there are parts in here that I just want to go hide because I think they're racist and horrible. But he wanted to do it, and it's a self-published thing by Janda Press. That would be Josh's press. And but if you like Wales and contemporary Wales, there's a lot of funny things in it, and including exploding stone penises and things. So there are things that I adore about it, and other things not so much. But so that's what I'm doing, and I'm going to arm wrestle Chadwick for the and a few other worthy opponents for this year's Aurora for best short story. So I don't want to call you names, Chadwick, but I'll wait till after I leave. I'll catch you tomorrow, you whippersnapper, you.
I would definitely agree with Den that if you're not a writer, if you're not writing. So that's the main thing. Get down there, thumb in chair, and get those words on the page. And however you do it, that's your thing. Yeah, so I've got a short story coming out in Shapers of Worlds Volume 2. It's called The Only Road. That'll be out in September. I just got hired on to be one of 3 editors for Life Beyond Us, which is an anthology of short stories about life anywhere in the universe. It's got an amazing TOC. And so, yeah, I'm going to get to edit that. I'm really excited. It comes out in 2022. You can find my short fiction on Curious Fictions, which is free unless you want to make a donation. I got book 2 of my trilogy is Flights of Marigold, so that's certainly available. Speculative
nominated for an Aurora.
Yep, nominated, yeah. So thank you to all our very generous panelists for sharing your insights and wisdom tonight. I think it was a really fun conversation. So, and we'll see you throughout the rest of the weekend in the various panels.
I'll
Thanks.
see you all
Thanks for moderating,
tomorrow.
Susan.
Yep. Thanks to all our participants.
Bye. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, all of you. It was wonderful.
Thanks, Reed. Thanks, Jen.
Jared.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Jared for
Yeah.
leaving.
Oh,
letting
and
me
Jared.
go through here.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Jared, for holding my hand yesterday.
Absolutely. And thank you for being telepathic. I moved over from watching you on Discord to here to ask you about Scrivener, and just right as I came, all you started talking about it.
Hey, that's the way we roll here.
It is. It's true.
Scrivener. I've got to try something. I don't know what I'm going to do. But now I'm all keen and ready to, if I wasn't so tired, I'd actually write something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And for those that are listening, those of you that are still on Discord and Programming One, your next program in that channel is coming up in like 2 minutes, where the world building panel will begin.
Oh, I so wanted to be on that. I so wanted to see it too. It's like taught world building.
That's
for,
on Discord, right?
yeah.
Pardon me?
Okay,
That's-
we'll
Yeah, that's what, back on the Discord that this is currently streaming to. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Well,
I'm
I'm going
tired.
to end you all.
Yay.
Thank you.
Will not live
Bye.
quietly.
Good night.
We will not go quietly.
Bye.
Night. Bye.